Okay, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you listen to this voice presentation. Okay, so my name is Victor, and I'm your anchor for this Cisco CyberOps training. It's a 28th module series in cybersecurity that focuses on tier 1 level skills for cybersecurity experts. We've gone through module 1 to 17, and this is the 18th module in the series. And we want to understand defense. Now, what do we want to learn in defense? We want to understand the concept of defense in depth strategy to protect our networks, our web applications, and all of the things that matter to us: data, security policies, regulations, and standards. Now, assets, anything of value, data, it can be our servers, our infrastructure devices, our end devices. Our greatest asset is our data, right? Not even the servers, not even the end devices or whatever. Data. Most of the time, data lost might not be recovered, but servers lost can always be recovered. It just costs money. Most of the times, if you do a quantitative analysis, you could assign a monetary value to a server lost, is a server stolen, or an end device stolen. But most of the times, data have great impact that are not quantifiable. Rather, you will always qualify them: business discontinuity, loss of loyalty, uh, customers seeing that you don't have a secured system, and of course, the customers are going to leave you. So those are your assets. Then vulnerabilities: when you have weakness in design, or your configuration, or your setup, or your processes, or even your people can be vulnerable. Then we'll talk about threat, any potential danger to an asset. One of the first thing you want to do is that you want to do a security audit. I will explore I will employ us to get online and get the Google search security audit for bank, file type, PDF, or security audit or cyber security audit. I can call it cyber security audit for school, for bank, for corporate organization, for whatever, file type, PDF. You want to see what the security audit looks like. Typically is that you want to be able to identify most of the assets you have, both the ones you own, both the ones you manage, both the ones that your outsourced consultants they use, the inventories of all of the items you have. Then you want to be able to identify these guys and see what threats do we have against them, right? A proper document can do that. Also, you want to be able to identify your vulnerabilities. What are the possible vulnerabilities of a system? Who may want to exploit these vulnerabilities? What are the consequences if vulnerabilities are exploited and assets are lost? You need a document for this, and you can still use this approach: vulnerability assessment for this, cybersecurity vulnerability assessment for this, file type PDF or file type doc. You're going to see quite a lot of samples, and you can see what should be contained um in your document. Threat identification for an e-banking system. For instance, if we say for a bank, internal system compromise, insider attack on the system, data center destruction, data input errors, phony transactions, stolen customer data. These are all the possibilities. Don't forget I said earlier on that for you to be able to secure your system, you have to start with the security audit, followed by a vulnerability assessment, then lastly a penetration testing. So you see, for a banking app, these are the susceptible forms of attack that we might have. Right. Identify threats. Organizations must use a defense in-depth approach to identify threats and secure vulnerable assets. Defense in depth will mean that you're not just using one layer of security, right? You're using an IPS, you're using an ASA, You're using what was it called? You're managing your endpoints, antivirus, anti-malware. You're using several approaches. That's what we call defense in depth. Okay, so Security Onion is a tool that explores the defense in depth approach. Look at this onion. So you have, this is my asset. You have a firewall, you have an IPS, you have content filtering, an authentication authorization accounting service, you have a hardened device, routers, switches, and the rest. Then you have your digital asset or physical asset. Right? So that's a classical way to explain device, or rather defense in depth. You want to explore what are the different ways I can protect asset A? What are the different ways I can protect asset B? Asset B. What are the different ways I can protect asset C? Right? Same thing with security artichoke. Now, you need to also understand security policies, regulations, and standards. Whether you're in South Africa, whether you're in Nigeria, whether you're in Switzerland, whether you're in US, whether you're in Kenya, whether you're in Spain, whatever country that you are in, your country is going to have a cybersecurity policy document or something that looks like it. You want to check that for your country, explore it, understand it, so that you can better understand what you need to put into consideration in trying to protect your IT infrastructure. Then you also have some regulations, some standards, like the what was it called? Like the General Data Protection Regulation. So here I will talk about General Data Protection Regulation, the PCI law framework, the HIPAA. Look up these things on Google, download the documents, the framework or the regulation, NIST, cybersecurity framework. These documents, these frameworks, they will help you better understand what you need to do with respect to security. What's a business policy? You want to be able to differentiate between a policy, a regulation, and a standard. Business policy are guidelines, right, that are developed by an organization to govern its action, right? It can be an information security policy document, it can be a network policy, it can be in any area with respect to the IT infrastructure. Look at some sample: company policies, employees policies, security policies. And as a cybersecurity expert, we want to infuse security measures, security countermeasures within these policy documents in our workplaces. Okay, so you have quite a lot. You also have identification and authentication policy. You have password policies. You have AUP policies, and you have quite a lot. BYOD, I've talked about this earlier on, so this is more detailed now. The question is that, do you have a BYOD policy? If you do, written or unwritten, so it should be written. So what do you allow in from your employees? What are the tools that you allow them to bring in? Phones, devices, gadgets. Because don't forget, we said in your security audit, you want to check you want to first identify all your assets. Now imagine you have 50 assets, but your employees bring in about 100 more assets. You're still vulnerable because you didn't put into consideration all of the devices that are going to be brought in by your employees. You want to specify the goal of your BYOD policy. You can also use same approach and say BYOD policy, cybersecurity BYOD policy for bank, file type doc. You're going to see a sample that should inform you how to construct, how to document most of the things we're discussing here. So you have several standards, regulations, and guidelines. So, for instance, the PCI DSS regulation is for payment, the payment card industry kind of standard. If anybody is going to be processing payments, cards, debit cards, credit cards, you need to make sure that you conform to that regulation. If anybody is going to be processing data, storing data, uh, giving out data, then you should conform to the General Data Protection Regulation. Okay, here we get to understand that if you are going to stay secured within our IT infrastructure, whether it's a website, like I said earlier on, you don't just say because I have SSL, I'm secured. No, you need to have SSL, you need to explore the OAPS project, Open Web Application Security Project. For networks, you need to make sure that you have firewall, you harden your device, you do your updates regularly. You want to mitigate against social engineering by training your staff, right? Okay, that's all for the Cisco CyberOps Module 18, which is Understanding Defense in Depth. Thank you very much and see you in the next module.